Welcome, everyone. Welcome to What's New in Configuration Manager. My name is Kerim Hanif. I'm a Senior Program Manager in Configuration Manager team.
Did you have to read your title?
Yes. And I have been working with the team for over 5 years. And before then, I was in VMM, actually, in System Center again. And in my areas are mainly content management, updates and servicing channel that we did in current branch, and amongst many things. And
I'm Jason Giffens, Program Manager Lead on the Config Manager team. I've been at Microsoft for about 12 years, 8 years before that in IT. Actually started my life, or my IT life, on SMS 1.2 in 1997. And nearly 20 years later, I'm on the product team. And it's been, honestly, probably the most exciting 2 years of my career, and the most exciting 2 years of the product life cycle, with the servicing updates, our bridging strategy to modern management, all the new capabilities we put into it, Windows 10, on and on and on. And that's really going to be the focus of our presentation today, is just going over what's new in Config Manager, what we've delivered, where we're going. And by the size of the crowd, which is phenomenal, I can see why we have 44,000 tenants on current branch, because it looks like there are about 2,000 people in the room, if not more. So thanks for coming. So we'll jump into objectives here. First off, we're going to talk about themes and directions. You've probably heard a lot about the co-management strategy this week, bridging that path to modern management, or one of the bridges to modern management. We'll get into that a little bit. We have some very special guests here with us today. It's to hear the voice of the customer. We did this in a Tuesday session, and that worked really well when we had Joseph from Avanade join us on stage. So we're going to try to repeat that today with the guest participation of Royal Bank of Canada, a couple folks there to talk about their journey, their partnership with us, how we've worked well together. We're going to go to understanding some of the new features of Config Manager. That's where Kerim's going to take over, because he knows them better than I do. I just basically get up and talk at big events like this, and they do most of the work. And then helping customers upgrade to current branch. Some of the things to think about if you're not on current branch, or if you are, how to stay current. And finally, driving the adoption of how we're helping driving the adoption of Windows 10, Office 365, EMS, and Azure. So let's go through some of the themes. The first one is really one of our big announcements this week. It's really about the bridging strategy that we're developing in partnership with our co-engineering team of Intune to help create a path to move from traditional to modern management. There are many ways to get to modern management. You can go straight there. You can supplement your application estate with VDI type solutions, and we feel we've added another clear path to start making the transition to modern management. And that's not at the expense, and trust me on this, that is not at the expense of any investments or any decrease in investments in Config Manager. We will continue to iterate. We will continue to provide current branch releases, because that is the foundation, as you probably heard Brad mention, of 100 million PCs managed by that solution. So that there is no end of Config Manager implied in that statement. It is simply a starting point now, or building a bridge to start thinking about and moving some of your population of Windows 10 to a modernized world. It's a modernizing theme. The other key piece we want to talk about are really our investments in a holistic security portfolio. And that's beyond really the security features in Windows 10, and those are great features, but just how we think about security generally, and where Config Manager comes in, and how to think about it as a security tool, the investments we're doing in the areas of security for both Windows and Office. The ease of adoption. We'll have a slide on this, so I'll let the graph speak for this one, but our adoption through current branch is, and I'm on the wrong point, I'm actually talking about deploying Windows 10 in Office. But anyway, current branch is a key part of staying current with Windows 10 in Office. I'll pivot quickly to that, and I'll go to the next slide to avoid any further embarrassment of fudging that one. Config Manager infrastructure streamlined, simpler to use. If you think about cloud management, one of the key promises, one of the key value props of cloud management is really about the cost of ownership reduction of Windows, simplifying the management, the life cycle of Windows. We're also taking a TCO reduction or cost of ownership reduction angle on Config Manager itself, through adding such capabilities as peer caching, which Karim works on, and reducing the size of the Config Manager footprint, adding high availability, making it Azure hostable. So we continue to look at ways to streamline your Config Manager environment as it continues to deliver these key management capabilities over time on Windows 10, but for both Windows 10 and Office. And finally, the commitment to delighting customers. And that's really one of the key reasons we wanted our friends at Royal Bank of Canada to come out and talk about how we partnered with them and how our servicing model has really enabled us to turn around capabilities quicker, whether they're coming from user voice or tap programs or direct customer conversations. We're really able to iterate and pivot faster with this servicing model. And we really value highly the customer feedback. We've always valued it, but we used to value it by saying, thanks for the feedback, and then crickets. Now we say, thanks for the feedback, and we'll get right on that, usually. So a little bit about this bridging of the classic to modern workplace. We're in the midst of a digital transformation. That's no surprise to anyone in this audience. But I lost my train of thought. The bridging strategy that I talked about earlier is really our fundamental way to start delivering on these promises, or a path to start delivering on these promises of modern management through the modern workplace, cloud IT, lower cost of ownership. It's really allowing, particularly the folks in this room, and most of you I'm sure have built your careers on being deep experts in PC management, and inclusive of all the other pieces of that, identity, applications, et cetera. But what we really have built this path for to deliver these promises is dependent on you. It's dependent on you and your expertise using the tools that we've provided or that we're building with this co-management strategy to empower organizations to navigate the complexity of fundamentally changing how you manage, deploy, operate, and service Windows and Office. So I mentioned before that the servicing model has been super successful, and that's one of the servicing model empowers us to deliver things like the bridge solution in a rapid fashion. We didn't come up with the strategy shift on the bridging story through co-management, as we call it. Co-management is the public name that we use for it. We really didn't come up with that until about 10 months ago, based on a number of customer conversations. Again, customer feedback, customer-driven change, customer-driven servicing models, current branch deliverables, et cetera. And as you can see from this chart, just to make sense of it, really what we're pointing out here is you can see the adoption by version. You can see the rapid ramp up of a new version, then the rapid drop off of the previous version. We have been successful beyond what we ever imagined with this model. It's oddly gone way faster than CM07 to 2012. Not sure why that is. Maybe because you had to migrate everything. But in the upgrade cadence, or in the servicing model, we're seeing rapid uptake, and it gets faster and faster and faster with each release as we build trust, as we build simplification of acquiring these updates, and it just continues to grow. To the tune of, as you saw, Brad announced, 100 million managed PCs and over 44,000 unique tenants participating in this model and staying current for the most part. And if you're in the light blue at the bottom, come talk to us after. So back to the challenges. The challenges of moving to modern management and why staying current with Config Manager, getting on board with this co-management strategy is so important. Is that there have been inhibitors. There have been inhibitors to adopting the modern management strategy, cloud management strategies, and and customers aren't realizing all of those benefits, the modern IT, the cloud analytics, the cost of ownership reduction. Even though we've done significant investments in these areas across Windows, Office, Intune, Identity Service, Azure Active Directory, the uptake has been slow. And so when we step back, when I pointed back to like 10 months ago when we pivoted on our strategy of, rather than, eventually go from Config Manager to Intune or AD to AAD, and we stepped back and we looked at what's stopping the customers from moving. So first and foremost, we saw feature gaps. These are the ones we can most easily engineer our way out of. We can close gaps in technology through development. We can get there. By feature gaps, I'm talking about support for Win32 applications or group policy transitions to modern MDM policy. Those are the most addressable from a backlog engineering process, program management perspective. The other three, however, are not things we could easily engineer our way out of, and this is where we got stuck. So the second on the list here, which we've termed the monolithic one-day problem, is based on, I can't tell you how many conversations I had going into customers, and they would have an XY axis chart, and they would have traditional management dropping over time and modern management going up, but the X-axis had one key problem. It had no dates. It was an aspiration, but it wasn't a project plan. And so what we constantly heard is, oh yeah, we're bought into modern, one day we'll get to modern, and then the next time we talk, one day we'll get to modern. One day never got there because people had to do their day jobs and keep the IT organization up and running, secured, productive. And it was just hard to make that transformation or identify all the pieces you needed to do to even make that transformation. The third one is with the decades of Windows in the enterprise, with the coming of Active Directory, Config Manager being the predominant management tool, partner and homegrown solutions deeply interacted with those capabilities or with those solutions. And through those integrations, you ended up getting things like application lifecycle management tools, asset management tools, really building on the open API set to fill gaps that weren't native to the products themselves, and to really address those and empower IT to be successful in workloads that weren't optimized in the core Microsoft pieces that did those functions. And so those became embedded in the enterprise and further increased this ecosystem, this mesh of things that really entrenched the traditional management style. And then the last thing, and we saw a lot of this out of telemetry, of all of our Win 10 clients that were coming into Config Manager Current Branch, they were most always domain joined and SCCM agent managed. Well, of course, SCCM agent managed, or we wouldn't have them in telemetry, but also domain joined. And what we learned is customers were just managing Windows 10 like they manage Windows 7, because that's how their processes work, that's how they did things. It was much culture, process, understanding, comfort level as it was the technologies being delivered. So how do we solve that? So we introduced co-management. I won't go too in-depth into it. I say that, then I'll talk about it for 10 minutes, but I'll try not to go too in-depth into that because we did a whole session on that Tuesday morning at 9 with folks from Windows. It's really about a practical way to migrate over time. And I want to stress, it's not the only way to get to modern management. There are other ways. You can, hardware refresh cycles. You can bring in, using autopilot, bring new assets in, and just start life in modern management. Certain parts of your organization may be perfect for modern management because they never come in the office. They have a limited application stack. They don't necessarily have the deep security posture that some of your high-value assets have. And so the other ways to get there, this is just another tool. This is a tool in your toolbox to use the knowledge that you have, particularly the folks in this room that do PC management day in and day out. Use the migration tools that we're building, or the transformation tools we're building, to make that shift, to drive the change, to drive that transition to modern management, cloud-based management, which is Azure Active Directory, Intune, all the Windows analytics, all the Windows cloud security services. But taking your knowledge and your knowledge of Config Manager, us highlighting the details of your environment back to you through Config Manager, and giving you transition paths to start moving workloads over to the cloud at the pace that's right for your organization. And that the pace that's right for your organization really underwrites that last box on the slide. It minimizes risk. IT is a risk-adverse part of any enterprise because that's just what the job function primarily is about. It's mitigating risk, making users productive, keeping those assets secure, keeping corporate resources secure. And a lot of tools have been built up in the orb or the sphere of traditional management to achieve that. And so we want to give you a way to achieve or start making those transitions, to have the hero moment, to be the drivers of change, using the foundations of Config Manager to make those cloud transitions and not putting your organizations at risk or impacting productivity. So this quote you probably don't recognize because I made it up. So I guess if you make up a quote, then it's my quote. I don't know. But first and foremost, we are committed to partnering with customers, understanding their requirements, and delivering on those promises. And I hope what you see today resonates with our commitment, with our engagement. We talk to customers daily, if not hourly. We have deep tap engagements. We have usually over 1 million clients adopted in our tap releases across 10 to 12 different clients. We are deeply committed to the customer voice, to listening, not just hearing, and we really do want to we really do want to work with you, partner with you to carry this, not just Config Manager, but the future strategies of cloud management and the transformation to cloud management on your feedback, on your voices, and we'll talk a little bit more later about one of our best forums, I should say, for that feedback through our user voice site and how much we have delivered out of user voice, which is directly from the feedback you've provided on solutions you'd like to see, changes you'd like to see made. And then we even make big strategic shifts based on hearing the customer challenges of how hard it's been for them to make the transition to cloud and modern management, and how we react to that and pivot our resources to start building solutions to empower change, to drive you into the future of Windows and Office. So with that, I want to introduce James from RBC. Thank you, James. They're all yours.
Thank you, Jason. Appreciate it.
Thanks.
Good afternoon, Ignite. Wake it up a little bit here. Let's have a little bit of fun. I want to take you on a little bit of a journey. Not a lot of slideware, not going to do death by PowerPoint to you. One slide is going to give you a little bit of an introduction to my bank. Mine, I don't actually own the entire thing. I have a little bit of stock, but I do work there and I have a lot of pride in the brand. And second one I'm going to pop to in a second is just a little bit of a bio on me, so you have some idea who you're talking to. And that's it for the PowerPoint. So let's have a conversation. And I'm going to walk you through a piece of brain damage that Jason had to go through. Jason came into my office one day and said, "We're trying to solve a problem. Help me understand what it is." And I said, "Well, Jason, it's kind of like this. We are living in the third generation of technology. And let's just level set on what that third generation actually means to us. Generation 1, 1960 to 1990, the era of the run. We answered a really simple question for every business out there: stocks, bonds, sell cars, make ice cream. I don't care. The business asked us as technologists one question: how do I run my business on IT? And we answered that question. Mainframes, mini computers, SNA networking. By about 1990, every business around the world, IT was an integral part of that business. So as soon as we answered the question, they changed it. You can run my business. Aces. Can you scale my business? From about 1990 to 2005, it was the era of scale. And we developed a whole bunch of scaling systems, distributed systems, IP networking, service-oriented architectures, the SAN, NAS infrastructures. All of these things designed to scale the business rapidly, cost-effectively. By about 2005, the business says, you can run my business, you can scale my business. Aces. And they changed the question again. And the question became, how do you change my business? Well, at least in my religious tradition, we say that God created the world in 7 days, but he didn't have an install base. We have 35 years of sedimentary technology with all of this goop wiring it together that makes it really difficult to push change in. And this is where we start seeing cloud introduction, the API agenda, and things like that. Now, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. My business changed the question twice. And so I'm pretty sure that when I give them this beautiful, change-driven, architected environment, they're not going to stop asking questions. They're going to ask another one. And the next question they're going to be asking me is, how do I run my business at the speed of my data? Cognitive, AI, data-driven architectures and technologies. So that's the landscape we're living in. We're trying to build Generation 3 systems, change-driven architected systems, and they are really characterized by a really simple phrase: on-demand, self-service, as-a-service, and automated. Those are the things that we want to get at. So I'm on a mission inside my organization to try and work with all of my IT partners to move the bank over the hurdle from Generation 2 into Generation 3 in this change-driven architecture. Jason got all that about that fast. And he's sitting back going, why do I care? Help me out with this. And I said, well, I want to look at my end user space. I have a couple of interesting business problems that I'm struggling with. What do? We sign a contract with HP, Dell, Lenovo, some OEM. They produce end user equipment for me. I get a VAR that I pay a couple of points to, and that VAR sources and ships and runs the logistics to get that onto my desktop. And then I have 1,000 elves that run around and configure those things. The very first thing they do is blow away the OS that was put on by the OEM. And then it gets provisioned out to the user. Days, lots of manual intensity. And I said, here's my challenge. I want the out-of-the-box experience. We have an RBC structured environment. We have a whole bunch of controls in that to safeguard and protect personal information, the bank's information, meet our fiduciary accountability to our clients and our customers. And we have to make sure those controls and the appropriate operating image is in place. I want you to bring me a Best Buy laptop, new in the box with the seal. I want you to pop it open in Starbucks, log in with an RBC identity, and power wash that machine. Turn it into an RBC asset right there. Because I want to tell every user the day they start working at the bank, go get an asset wherever you want. Or maybe I'll ship it if I can get it cheaper. I want it to show up in their hands and say, log in using your email password, and it will self-provision everything that you need to have. I don't want to touch it. An enormous value stream that I can take right back out of my environment. That adds value. Not quite enough, because things happen. People change jobs, they change roles, they come into the bank, they leave the bank. I'm tired of re-provisioning just as much as I'm tired of provisioning. So I want to log in with the ID that says re-provision, and it blows that thing away. And now I'm ready to go again. Go make that true. So Jason's thinking about this. And then in comes one of my guys, Hasnain. You're going to meet Hasnain in just a second. Kind of fun, young, impetuous, enthusiastic. He's like a puppy, all paws and enthusiasm. You know, really excited about what he does. And he came in all excited about some stuff he'd figured out on Intune. He's like, oh, I can do this cloud-based management. I can do this really great stuff for you. And I said, Haz, I don't care. What? I don't care. What's the outcome I'm going to get out of it? Why do I want to care about what you can do? And he started leading into exactly the kind of user story that I just laid out for you. No IT intervention. I can take an out-of-the-box asset. I can turn that into a usable asset configured for the user, for his line of business, with his appropriate profile and applications. And I can make all that happen without any interactive user. I said, that I care about. Shiny technology, not so much. User outcomes and business outcomes, I care about those a lot. So he's going to come out here and talk to you in a second about what we actually did to make that true. But I'm going to back up here for a second because I said we live in an era of change, and there are three things I want to focus you on. We have to deal with change. It is the new normal. It is the new constant. Change-driven architectures, changing user requirements, changing ecosystems and spaces within which we work. Accommodate change. 2, to make that true, we have to use a whole series of new technologies, new capabilities, and new learnings, and we cannot manage them all. We need partners that will work with us on that. Change, partners. Thirdly, outcomes. It's not about the technology, it's about the business outcomes that we can drive with it. And so this was the conversation that Jason got in about 10 minutes, sitting in my office. And he kind of reeled back for a second. And he said, yeah, I'm game. I'm game. We're going to make that happen for you. And I'm very happy to report that the work that we've done with Microsoft in partnership with them has resulted in several updates to the Redstone 2 and Redstone 3 releases. We've got another one coming up in, I think it's 1803 that we're looking for. They're going to give us some of these capabilities. But ultimately, I'm going to be able to completely rewrite an entire value stream that consumes multiple millions of dollars inside my enterprise today. That's an outcome. And that's driving to the changed user experience that is on demand, as a service, self-service, and automated. So at the end of the day, as an executive in the bank, it's only my job to come up with the idea of the stuff we want to do. I don't actually have to do the hard work. I'm just the hype man at the end of the day, if you will. And so what I want to do is actually have Haas come up here and talk to you for a little bit about what he actually did to make that happen. So with that, I'm going to invite Haas to come up. Hasnain, come on up. I promised you a bio slide. There it is.
Thank you, James.
There you go, sir.
Thank you, everybody. So, you know, I have to say, now you know what I have to put up with daily. I'm gonna, you know, I'm not saying that my boss is a little, is a little nuts, but I'll let you be the judge of that at the end of this. So, you know, I'm gonna just flip a slide here. There's my big picture on there in case none of you can see. I think it's in, life size. But I just want to kind of carry on the conversation that James, started with, and, our journey. And that's really what this is about. It's our journey going towards modern management. How do we take something that has plagued us for some time and work towards a solution that enables our users, that makes things simple, that simplifies, and enhances the user's experience. So to touch on some of James's points, he basically said we brought him the shiny new toy, told him what we were going to do. When we finally came to the crux of it and said, okay, we have a story. We kind of know what we're trying to achieve, but what are we going to do? How are we going to now achieve this? And that was basically, okay, great, Has, go make it happen. And as everyone here, I'm sure knows, that's so easy, especially in an enterprise-style, environment that has had lots of years of growth and change to make sure that you're holding that security posture, you're holding, DLP, and at the same time keeping the experience, the consumer experience or the end user's experience, fantastic. Because that's what this is all about. It's enabling the end user. So with that, we started kind of peeling back, and the analogy that comes to mind is the big onion. And we all know what happens when we start peeling back onions. It makes you cry. And cry we did. It was very interesting to see that the amount of work that had to be done to make this vision true was quite enormous. So partnering with Microsoft and figuring out exactly how we can get to this end state was a very big deal for us. And I think that's what is the success story, is the partnership we built and how we resolved some of the core issues that stopped us from delivering this solution. As an example, we have certificates for Wi-Fi. For any one of our users or our machines that have been provisioned, we have security controls that won't let you onto our network, that won't let you onto our wireless system internally until you have certificates delivered, and there's a lot more authentication that occurs. But one of the big stop kind of points that halted everything was the ability to deliver a certificate to the user's device during enrollment. So we went back to Microsoft and we said, here is our problem. This is the issue. The current setup requires a Microsoft CA. We don't use that. We don't have that. And we're not about to just stand one up. We're a large organization. It's not as simple as turn on a machine and set up another CA and off you go. it was just an impossible task. And that's where the partnership became extremely important. We managed to, together, in a short period of time, working very closely together, enabling Entrust CA support in Config Manager in a hybrid environment for Intune. So it's a Intune Config Manager hybrid environment, and when you do an enrollment, you would get your certificate. And that opened up the possibilities endlessly. We managed to complete and deliver phases of our projects in no time flat. It was a very tight and amazing partnership because we worked practically together to get to the end goal. And Microsoft's support was phenomenal. And the partnership was very deep and embedded to work together and get to the end goal. And the end goal was we now can enroll a device from anywhere. And once the enrollment is completed, the user is presented with a cert, a few applications, our posture is put on the machine, and we can secure the machine and provide our end users yet another experience which is very modern and very cool. They can help themselves, very quickly get up and running, and depending on the posture you choose, get productive, which is really a big part of that end goal, is getting productive. So I don't want to sit here and kind of get into the crux of everything, because I think I might start putting people to sleep. So I'm going to stop there and say, thank you very much for the opportunity to come out here and talk with you guys about our experiences and our partnership, which has been phenomenal. And I'll hand it back to Jason. Thanks, Jason.
Okay, so what I want to build off of, what the Royal Bank of Canada folks were talking about. First off, being a bank, financial organization, security challenges, regulatory challenges. So if a bank can start this transformation, I think everybody can start doing this. To kind of go into a little more detail about what Hosnain and what's the other guy? James, just kidding. And actually, speaking of James, I'm not going to tell you what he actually called me in his office, but I'll leave that up to a side story. So what that really, you probably discerned, it's really that autopilot experience, that getting out of imaging. That's one of the huge value props of the autopilot out-of-box experience, getting the PC into the hand of the users. And this is really this infographic that just describes that whole journey of self-service deployment, proactive insights, always up to date, ending up in a simplified management model with modern management. But the challenge, and it was exemplified by us working with RBC and some of the challenge they face based on the market segment they're in. The challenge here is we didn't have, without the co-management path in place here, you have the only direct path from autopilot to this state the only path in autopilot is to a pure modern state. And for organizations not ready for the full modern state, it compromises their ability to uptake autopilot the way that you could take it to get out of the multi-million-dollar cost of imaging, depending on the size of the organization. So, working with RBC, working with others, having that co-management bridge allows you to effectively get a system into combination config manager and Intune management. And the benefit of that is that you don't have any deep structural changes to process. You're doing everything the way you used to do it, minus imaging, hopefully, using autopilot, the out-of-box experience to get to this state. But you end up with a PC that is still getting configurations from config manager, but it's also wired to the future through a connection to Intune. And the benefit of this, as exemplified by some of the stories you're hearing from RBC, is that you can start down this path. You can start realizing that end user, enabling the end user, delivering the shrink wrap PC, but still persisting the management style and processes that you use today that your organization is built on, and then over time transitioning those to a modern state from the foundations of SCCM or Config Manager. And this is just a simple screenshot from Intune to better describe that workflow. So what you saw on that last screen is we pre-configured the SCCM client in Intune as an application. We target it to the appropriate device or user group. That user goes through the autopilot experience. That takes them through a simplified process to get to an authentication screen that is branded by the organization, so it feels like that is the organization's machine. It's getting that from the ID published up to the autopilot service. You probably heard a lot about autopilot this week, so I won't go too deep into autopilot. And then through an Intune enrollment, or sorry, an AED registration, after the user authenticates, Intune is you're auto-enrolled into Intune, and Intune drops the config manager client down. And what we used to do is we would turn off Intune at that point, and we would break that Intune connection, and SCCM would take over completely. But what we changed with co-management, one of the things we changed with co-management was not breaking that integrity, not breaking that MDM enrollment into Intune when we land the SCCM agent. And so the SCCM agent landed, and you heard the Starbucks reference or the apartment reference from RBC. The user can get productive anywhere. With the cloud management gateway, which Karim will talk more about, that client can talk back to the config manager on-prem services and not even have to be on the corporate network. So that PC can truly start life and be secure and productive without ever touching the corporate network, because it's going through the cloud resources that deliver the SCCM agent that then provide the services, the applications, the security policies, et cetera. And then when all that's landed, the next thing to start thinking about is this, onboarding to co-management. And what this is a workload-based movement of the common administrative tasks that you do today to move those over to a modern approach using Intune, but at the cadence that's right for your organization. It's not, while lift and shift may work for some, or the hardware refresh cycle may work for others, or the VDI path may work for others, we built this as yet another path to modern management, built off not just the technology you're using today, but on the deep insights and the experience you have with PC management to take your organization there safely and to drive that change by moving the workload at the pace and the order that's right for your organization. And another thing we're going to do here is provide insights through management insights for forensics on your environment to tell you how cloud ready you are in specific areas. So it's not just a tool to move groups of clients to cloud, it's also your insights and discovery point to identify how cloud ready you are and what changes you could make to start expediting your transition to cloud. So this is a huge piece for us. It's a key investment. And with that, I want to move to the second point, and I talked about our real focus on security. And the one I really want to focus on here, which I don't think got the not applause, so to speak, but the recognition, or maybe it's just our own marketing challenge that we didn't really sell this as much as we should have as a security feature, and that's our real-time script execution feature that came in 1706. So on the heels of the recent malware incidents where you need to react quickly, imagine the capability of running a PowerShell script instantly across hundreds of thousands of PCs and getting instant results back. You could, you could shut down ports, you could configure firewall, you could force a Windows Update agent scan. Lots of things you can do with this capability in real time for that real-time reaction, reactionary to a malware incident, or proactive protection against something else, or just something you want to get out there quickly, a key new application, for example. So that's one of our really great features in 1706. Other things that we've worked on are support for express updates. The cumulative update size has been a challenge in Windows 10 for some customers, and by adding express support, we mitigate some of that size challenge by doing byte level transfer of just the pieces of the update that the client needs from the distribution point. We've extended the perimeter of Config Manager with the Cloud Management Gateway, so it's not a Herculean task to spin up a DMZ environment with PKI and certificate authorities that you have to manage to allow your clients that are often not on the corporate network, which increasingly or more and more are not on the corporate network, if a corporate network even still exists. And you're able to reach those clients. And you're able to reach those clients in real time if you need to reach out to them and force them to do something. Additionally, driving transition to Windows Update for Business. One way to get off the treadmill of trying to keep up to date with the cumulative updates of Windows 10 through upgrading Config Manager to get Express support, upgrading WSUS to get changes there, and just staying on the multi-piece treadmill, is start transitioning those workloads to Windows Update for Business, whereby either SCCM or Intune configures policies like deferral rings or when the updates run. Think of it as the group policies for Windows updates. And it configures the clients to execute on a particular time and really implement and forget it. Get out of that micromanaging of every update, because we don't do KB 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 anymore. There's one cumulative update that comes out each month at the same time. And with the Windows Update for Business transitions, since the Windows Update service is always current with the most optimized solutions to deliver updates, like delivery optimization using peer caching, that gets you off the treadmill. And that's one of those items that tie that back to co-management. That's one of those pieces you could start your transformation of right away. Move a portion of your population to have your update policies managed by Intune and stop having them be managed by SCCM and WSUS, and use Windows Analytics Update Compliance Service to check your compliance. Even before that, you could enable telemetry using Config Manager on your Windows 10 clients and enable Windows Analytics Update Compliance to start looking at your update compliance state without making any process changes on how you deliver updates with Config Manager and WSUS. Provides a great oversight service to really drive that denominator. One of the common things we hear is, I don't even know how many clients I'm supposed to be patching. If you wired them all to an analytics service that's not compromised by potentially a client health issue, a firewall issue, a roaming condition, or it can't talk to the reporting services, you really increase your ability to see the compliance state of your estate. And that's something you can also deliver and configure with Config Manager natively, just pointing clients, enabling telemetry and pointing clients to Windows Update analytics. There are also some System Center endpoint protection enhancements. And then the last one is super important, are all the Windows 10 security optimizations with Windows Defender ATP. Those are significant investments, and we consider this, if you kind of went in priority order the past several months, it was co-management 1, security 2, or actually it was 1A and 1B. And that I think it really summarizes our security investments. And with that, I will finally give Karim a chance to talk.
Thanks, Jason. So let's take a look at some of these things. How are they actually going to be? How can you implement these in your environment? So, for example, create and run PowerShell scripts. So, under device collections or under any actually device itself, now when you right-click, you actually see this run script command. And when you click on it, it opens up a new nice wizard, and in there you can add the PowerShell commands that you want. Let's say you want to know the operating system of that device or collection, and you basically get a result. And it's really fast. I mean, you get it in minutes. The good thing about this is that you get instant response to your question, and you can take action to anything that is happening in your environment, any threat or anything like that, very fast and very effective.
Pretty much anything you can do with PowerShell, you can do here. Anything you can do with PowerShell, you can do here, right?
Yeah, exactly. So the Express Update support. Jason mentioned the Express Update support that we have. So cumulative updates, they can be really big. So the good thing about this is that if you enable it in here, in the software update point component properties, what happens is, yes, you download more on the DPs, so the DP content library is going to be bigger, but the good thing is you're going to see much less from the DP to the client. So the clients are only going to get the delta, or the things that they need from that service. And the way you can actually select the clients that you want to send this policy to in the client setting. And what you do is you basically enable this here, and the port that you basically select the port, and just note that this port doesn't require to be enabled. It's a local port, it's a listener port, so you don't need to open any firewall ports for this. And we are actually changing the text about that because it was kind of misleading. So the minimum requirements are 1702. And you need 1607, Windows 10 with April cumulative update for this to work. and with a bunch of performance improvements in 1706 for this. So the downloads are much faster on the client side now. And the other good thing is now we have a client peer cache support for this. So, and also together with this, and also Office 365 Delta updates too. So both of them are supported in client peer cache now. So I also wanted to, Jason also mentioned the Cloud Management Gateway. And the scenario for this is, you know, right now, a lot of us you have laptops, we go out of the corporate network, and when we want to connect to the corporate network, there are firewalls that disables us to do that. So we had, for a long time, the internet-based client management feature, which was you had to create MP, DP, SUP, you put all of those in the DMZ, you lock them down, you maybe have an AD and certificate authority there too, so, but you have to open all these ports. And same thing outbound and inbound. So this wasn't very popular, as you know, because of that reason. I mean, no one wanted to open this many ports. So the Cloud Management Gateway is a great feature. It uses a connection point. It's a connector role in the corporate network. And it has just an output port 443 to the Cloud Management Gateway service. And Cloud Management Gateway service is, if you're familiar with cloud distribution points, is a very similar concept. So you get your Azure subscription, and that Azure subscription, you provide that Azure subscription in a wizard in Configuration Manager, and we go there and create this service for you. So it's a PaaS service, platform as a service, so you don't have to worry about the VMs that we create. You don't have to worry about patching those VMs. You don't have to worry about any of those things. And when the client then roams, you need to provide the name of there's a URL, and you provide that in the client and to talk to the CMG that is out there. And once you do that, client talks to the CMG. Client thinks that it's talking to an MP, and we proxy that command inside, and there's no firewall ports needs to be open, and it works really beautifully.
And I think one of the killer scenarios there, not just the client, you know, moving back and forth across the corporate boundary, but it's that provisioning scenario, you know, where you get the new box not on the corporate network, you open that, you pre-configured, and that switch he was talking about, that URL reference is one of the parameters you'd configure in the SCCM client being delivered by Intune. Then we'd use AAD authentication to communicate back to the Cloud Management Gateway at the first minute, first hour of life of that PC. Yeah. So it's instantly talking back to Config Manager through this much simplified process of the Config Manager or the Cloud Management Gateway without having to spin up, you know, a huge investment in a DMZ hosted service to deliver the same, if it was even possible, because of the way we changed authentication with our integration into Azure Active Directory at the same time. So, so take the two key scenarios there is crossing the network boundary on an existing PC, and then the provisioning piece to get a new PC provision without having to be on the corporate network and not having to re-image it.
Yeah. So the roles that are supported for this now is MP and software update points. And we are adding, in 1706 this is the case, but we are looking to add more roles supported by Cloud Management Gateway. Actually, I'm going to talk about one that is in the coming slides. But the other thing is, like, if you need a DP, you can't use the ones that are internal in the corporate network. You need to use the Cloud DP. And for that, we enabled third-party updates to be hosted on cloud distribution points. And this wasn't supported before, but we enabled that so that you can actually use a cloud distribution point to install third-party updates to this server or client. So Windows Update for Business is, you can now support this. We support this in 1706 too. You enable it, you create a policy, and you can defer the settings for future updates or quality updates. And this way, the clients that are mostly on the internet and not on the corporate network can actually use Windows Update to update themselves. So again, like Jason said, WSUS, you don't have to worry about WSUS in there, upgrading the WSUS for those clients.
And I think the sequence there is enable update analytics first, or update compliance, Windows Analytics update compliance first, so you can just get the telemetry. You don't have to change anything for that. Pilot, Config Manager, configuring the client to talk to Windows Update for Business, which effectively are just policy settings pointing it to Windows Update with some deferral settings that you've configured. Then consider moving that entire workload to Intune Manage so the SCCM is not involved at all in your Windows Update strategy, and your compliance is coming purely from the cloud. So that's a kind of an ordered step of sequence to go through to iterate yourselves through adoption of a Windows Update for Business model. But it's just native in Config Manager, as Grim points out here. So it's easy to pilot on a small set of machines today.
Yeah. Endpoint protection, we supported cloud protection servers. This used to be called MAPS for a long time. And in this release in 1706, we added the levels of blocking suspicious files. So in this case, let's say if you select this high with extra protection, what happens is if the system finds a file that is suspicious, it sends it to cloud protection servers. While it's being analyzed, you're basically blocking that file. And you basically select your own level, and we basically enable this in the default anti-malware policy, so you can set this with Configuration Manager. So other ones, just to these are the other security features that we enabled. One of them is you basically now have more properties that are coming in, and you know more about your TPM chips in the default hardware inventory. Device Guard is a great feature where you can lock down a laptop and only run the EXEs that the Windows natively owns or natively ships, or we actually in SCCM delivered. This was in 1706. What we did was we actually added a folder, so you can provide a folder with your trusted EXEs, and that is also those are also enabled, and everything else is blocked. So you can provide specific files or folder paths. And there's a great session tomorrow, and Dune and Chris are going to talk more about what's in Windows Defender Advanced Threat Protection. So highly recommend to go to that session tomorrow. Okay, so the third theme that we had was how the customers are using, the features that help customers to easily adopt and deploy Windows 10 and 365. So let's take a look at these. You've probably seen this before. When you're deploying Windows 10 or Office 365 or anything else, our recommendation, and we actually use this in-house for our updates and servicing feature, is you basically start small, and then you increase your rings. And in this case, this is the recommendation for Windows 10 and Office 365 with configuration. When you're deploying this, keep this in mind. This helped us a lot, and I'm sure it will help you in your organization. Yeah,
and the other key thing here is really just to highlight the shift, highlight the shift of the semi-annual channel and the Config Manager alignment with that, which has really confused a lot of people. It's kind of confusing to us. When we say we've aligned Config Manager to the semi-annual channel, that doesn't necessarily mean we're SIM shipping on the same dates. It means we're in the same support model as those products. So 18 months of support, which we support 18 months of versions of Config Manager aligned to each of these releases. So the reason, and I'm kind of getting into this slide, so since you already clicked there, the confusing part is we still ship 3 times a year. So we're not reducing our shipping frequency to twice a year. The reason we do that is because we always want to be in front of the upcoming semi-annual channel, Office, and Windows releases, so that you don't have to go through your servicing. Even though it's quicker now, you still don't have to go through servicing of Config Manager to get it current before you can start deploying, testing, validating Windows, the next release of Windows and Office. So for example, and I think it's on the next slide, I didn't mean to take over, I'm going to step over here. You want to finish this one, or do you want me to do this one?
Thank you, Jason.
Thanks for the feedback.
So basically, just like Jason said, for example, in 1706,
like a top once I get going.
We actually have the support for Fall Creators updates already in 1706. It's a backward compatible support, we call it. So that means, everything that used to work in 1702 or the previous version of Windows would work. The new things will not work, but at least you can actually deploy day 0. So you don't have to worry about that. Same thing with ADK. and the ADK is the same. Sometimes we constantly test these versions and ADKs. If you find something, for example, we did find something for 1703 version. I have a link there underneath, so we blog them. You know about it, so just to be careful.
But our intent is to always be ahead of the forthcoming Windows and Office releases, so that we're not a gate to you being successful with staying current with Windows and Office.
Exactly.
That's the main point of those 3 slides.
Also, like, we want to also make your life easier. Windows Surface, Microsoft Surface, like, for example, in order for you to install the firmware updates, we now added the ability to get the firmware updates for Microsoft Surface computers in Configuration Manager, and that basically, like, once you enable that, now when you go to your all software updates, you see the Surface drivers there. So Windows Analytics, we talked about it. You heard about it a lot in this conference. And we have, again, a client setting that we added just for Windows Analytics. And in this, you can basically provide your Windows 10 8.1, like the level of telemetry that you want to send to Microsoft for analysis and or business intelligence. And then you can provide your commercial ID key, which is a group that, you know, like if you use the same commercial ID key for a bunch of computers, you will basically know which computers are coming from your organization. And so all of these are client setting. You can set this in default settings. And right now, we use them for update readiness and update compliance. But the difference of using this with Configuration Manager is that you can actually take an action too. Because you can go to the Windows Analytics in Azure portal and see, you know, all your matrix and upgrade analysis and compliance. But when you see that in the Windows Analytics dashboard in Config Manager, you can create a collection and take an action. So we have actually a link that you create a collection from that selection and right away take an action. So that's the add-on. I mean, that's the advantage of using this with Configuration Manager.
And this combined with just enabling or going through the workflow, going through the web to opt into update analytics was that first step I talked about. That's how, with Config Manager, you set the commercial ID, you enable the service, then you go enable the service just to register for the service online. It's a free service. The update analytics and upgrade analytics pieces are, and you can start seeing the data immediately, but you haven't changed anything in how you're delivering the updates. SCCM and WSUS are still patching you. You're just getting your telemetry and analytics in the Windows service. And again, those are free, so try them.
Yeah, and for Office 365 updates, you can send them with Configuration Manager, of course, but with 1706, now it's seamless. So the customers would not understand that it's coming from us because we use the same familiar Office notifications, you know, the drop-downs from the UI, and so your users would be, you know, you would not understand that it's Configuration Manager. So it's seamless interaction with Office 365. So our fourth theme is how do we make Configuration Manager simpler and easier to use so that we can lower your total cost of ownership. So we are cloud enabling. We added a bunch of cloud services to our product, and they were all under administration and cloud services. And it's mainly like for the Azure cloud services, we saw that most of them are actually using the same information. So we wanted to make that a little bit easier for you. So we consolidated all of them in a one wizard in 1706. So now you can actually create all of them at the same time or one by one. And if you're creating them one by one, then it actually auto-populates the fields that, you know, like afterwards. So it's a very, very nice way to actually consolidate all of those into one. One of the big things in 1610, back in 1610, was boundary group improvements. And DPs were the first boundary group improvement that we did. We wanted to make sure that when you set your boundaries and you define the DPs that needs to go to each, you can basically see all of the fallbacks, and you set fallback times. So it's very easy and easy for you to set up these relationships between the boundary groups. And then in 1702, we added software update points. But software update points and DPs are totally different beasts. So you don't want the software update to be, fall back in 5 minutes, but you may want your DP to fall back in 5 minutes if it's a local DP. So that's why we had this like a limit of 120 minutes. Minimum 120 minutes, the client tries to talk to the software endpoint. If not, it will basically, then it will fail over. So there is that 120 minutes in the code, hard-coded number. And, but in the UI, we actually have it so that you can now actually go lower than 120 minutes. And we're going to change it in the next version of the UI. But until that time, if you basically set up this like a relationship between two boundary groups and don't worry about that 120 and lower it to 20 minutes, know that the fallback is going to be still 120 minutes. It's not going to change because that's, but if you use it for 150, we will honor it. So it needs to be more than 120. It's just a small improvement, but it's.
And you put this in the simplification section?
Simplification is for the software update points to.
That would be simpler, pointing to Windows Update.
Other things that we added are SQL Always On improvements. We added SQL Always On to Configuration Manager, but it was only supporting the synchronous commit mode replica. Now we added the asynchronous too. So now our HA, we are taking a look at our high availability scenarios. There is another feature that has been very popular when we first announced it, and it's in technical preview. I'm going to talk about it. But this one is like one step, it gets you one step closer to really high available configuration manager infrastructure. And now with the asynchronous commit mode replica support, now you can use whatever SQL Always On you have, and it would basically work. But it's not recommended for the production level databases. You should use this for backup and recovery cases, the async, at least the async one. Even SQL, when you want to fall back to asynchronous, it basically tells you that you may see some data loss in this case. So that's why we don't support it. We don't recommend it that way. Network access account, now you don't need to use it for client peer cache. It used to be a requirement, and it was slowing the adoption. So we removed that. But other scenarios still need it. OST still needs it. So make sure not to remove it right away. The other thing that is very important to us is updates and servicing, because that is the future that is making customers keeping up to date with Config Manager. And if you keep up with Config Manager, you also keep up with Windows. So it's very important that it works. And one of the things that we were saying was the downloads were sometimes stuck in downloading state, and customers and admins were doing all kinds of things, and you see it in the forums, and they were trying everything to get rid of that situation, and they were sometimes doing some unsupported things. So we wanted to stop that. So that's why we created this reset tool. So if it's in downloading state, you can run this tool, and it will just reset it, and it will just download it again. It will restart. So that is hopefully will help you if you're in that situation. TLS 1.0, again, a security feature. So now we have a support document to enable TLS 1.2. So we added that. WinP versions, like when you're keeping up to date with Windows 10, you also need to update your boot images. But it's sometimes a pain. So right now, if you update the ADK and then update Configuration Manager, we update your boot images automatically. So you don't have to do anything. If you update Configuration Manager first, and then you forgot, oh my God, I didn't update my ADK, then you can do that, but in the deployment setting, we actually have a checkbox, and it will update your WinP images in the boot images. So that has been a big user voice item, actually. We added another role, data warehouse, for historical reporting. And it's in 1706 production. We took it out of pre-release, and you can push data to this daily or weekly, and for up to 3 years. And with these reports, you can see the historical data. So I think we have 7 reports. We are adding more, but you basically see historical data. That's another one. Another huge thing we did in 1706 was accessibility. whole Microsoft was, doing this accessibility features, and we had some visually impaired SCCM admins, and they were not being able to use the product, and they were about to lose their jobs. So with these changes, we added a lot of shortcuts, the reader improvements. So, and we got some really good feedback from them saying that they're back on job. They can actually do a function in their organizations. So Jason mentioned user voice. So this is one way that we are getting feedback from customers. Other ways are conferences like this or TAP programs. But this is like all our engineers look at this daily. And if you go there, the link is underneath Configuration Manager User Voice. There are over 2,000 ideas. There are all kinds of ideas. Most of them are in OST section. And the ideas are, it doesn't have to be a lot of votes to be implemented. So there's an idea that got one vote that got implemented. There's an idea that got like 1,500 votes that got implemented. So it doesn't matter. So just please use that and put your ideas there. The CMG, like Cloud Management Gateway, boundary improvements, they all came from there. And some more, just to give you an example, small things, but collapsible task sequence groups, like hiding the task sequence process. So if you don't want the user to see something, you can hide it. All came from there. Or like Software Center, let's say you want your user to install a software from an app from a Software Center, but you don't know how to explain it. You basically use this share icon, get the link, copy it, put it in an email, send it to them. They click on it and they install it. So these are small things, but they all came from user voice.
I think the vote thing you're talking about is like small things. Large amount of votes is definitely something high on our list, but we'll still try to pick off some of the smaller vote items if it's just a simple change. Sure. It's just it's easy to do.
Yeah.
So.
Another one, this was a big one actually. Like if you have a big suite of, let's say, a product, like 20 gigs, 30 gigs, and you install it to a client, and as you know, our agent, it actually cleans up its cache time to time. And now customer wants to, or user wants to uninstall the product, but it cannot find the product where it was installed. So it basically downloads the whole thing back again just to uninstall. So in order to get rid of this, we basically had this feature. Now you can, in the deployment settings, you can provide the content location for uninstall. It can be totally different location. So that came from user voice. The high DPI console came from user voice. So these are, great features. And we also have a lot of features in technical preview. So technical preview is our first step for a feature to make it to production is technical preview. We put it there, we get feedback. Please install technical preview. All you need is a 1 VM, and you have and it updates monthly. So you see what's coming, what we are doing. You basically keep up with us. And right now in technical preview, nested task sequences are there. Like a conditional access is now using DHA, like device health attestation, again, a Windows service to give compliance. The feature that I was talking about was site server high availability. That is in technical preview, which allows you to, your site, you to actually create a site system, actually site server with a passive state. So you can create, and it basically uses the same SQL. So what that allows you to do is you can actually make the passive one active. Now you can actually, you have a high available system. And that is in technical preview right now. And we are hoping that it's going to make to production. And if a feature is in technical preview, it doesn't mean that it's actually going to go to production the next release, but you know that it's coming. So we don't make that promise, but it's coming. So other things that are coming are co-management, as we talked about. Another big thing that I'm working on is moving distribution points between sites. We hear customers saying they want to actually consolidate their infrastructure, and they want to get rid of their secondary sites. But they have a DP there, and they want to keep that DP. They don't want to send all of those files again. So now what you're going to be able to do is like move a DP from a secondary to primary, primary to primary. So that's one feature that is coming. Software Center, if now the laptop moves to the internet and now it's trying to install an app from Software Center, Cloud Management Gateway doesn't support it right now, but we're going to add support for that for Cloud Management Gateway so that they can actually download it, the app. So the last one is you can actually have a lot of extensions that you're extending the Configuration Manager UI, and those extensions, everyone loves our admin console update experience. Like whenever you upgrade Configuration Manager, the console upgrades automatically. So we want to do the same thing for extensions, for third-party extensions, so they upgrade automatically. So,
and one thing I wanted to add there before you click through is the management insights. I didn't touch too much on this, but the intent behind that is that is an interface that is really insights into not just cloud readiness, but also the intent of that is a framework that we can drop rules into at any point, not necessarily even tied to a GA release or a servicing release, but we can drop rules down to give you insights into improving your own implementation of Config Manager, identifying unused boundaries or distribution points that aren't ever servicing content, or just some capabilities there that really let you start, trimming down the overhead of your Config Manager implementation. It sounds like a vacuum cleaner up there. I don't know what that is. You guys hear that out there? Okay. Last time Skep came up in a presentation, the fire alarm went off, so it's always something.
It's you, Jason.
It is. And so we really want to approach that TCO reduction from top down, getting you, empowering you to move to cloud, and really bottoms up by really, limiting your SCCM footprint and getting the cost ownership reduction there as well. So, the review is what we started with. One thing I just want to leave with is, our commitment to providing another bridge, a viable bridge for everyone, particularly the Config Manager user base, install base, to start their transition to cloud. That is our future. But as you see today, with all the investments in Config Manager, that does not imply we're not investing in Config Manager. With 100 million clients, we will continue investing in Config Manager. Our goal is to drive a path to the future, and we will continue investing in Config Manager as long as customers continue using Config Manager. So that's a key takeaway, and I think all of the stuff that Kerim walked through showed our investments, the RBC partnership hopefully shows our commitment to customers and always looking for strategic new ways to empower and enable you, particularly the professionals in this room that have likely many of you done PC management for a long time, to make you and your organization successful and not just using our products, but driving to the future of both Windows 10 and Office manageability. So thank you so much.